Okay. Okay. Gotcha. So we're good. We're we're recording now. What time is it? I can pause that, but then I have to remember to start it again.
I'll remind you. Go ahead and pause the recording.
If that's possible. Okay. Pause for reminding me to do that, and I'm going to broadcast. Here we go. Well, I'm clicking the broadcast button, and dadgummit, if nothing's happening, nothing is happening. There we go. Now it's happening. Yay. All right. Okay. Hello, everybody. And we're going to give it a few minutes for everybody to get here. Hope you're having a beautiful spring day wherever you are. We are still in the 60s in Wyoming, thank goodness. So, welcome to today's podcast or webinar. It's going to be really fun. This is a fun one.
So while folks are waiting, I'll share kind of a fun story. This weekend, those of you who know me know that one of the things I'm very passionate about, other than advancing the knowledge for young adults and children and families that are dealing with learning and attention challenges, is whitewater canoeing. And we've had to be very careful during this time frame to get out and doing shuttles. And so my wife actually does the shuttle. We'll drop off a vehicle, so we're not getting in the vehicle with any other people. But my daughter and I went, and she's really gotten to be quite a good canoeist. But the last time we went, she had a little bit of a swim, and so she was feeling a little risk averse. And when we first started out, there was a high level of anxiety. And so eventually, we kind of working through that. And I said, honey, you're not engaging your hips and your head the way that you used to, because you're afraid, and it's making it more difficult for us to maneuver the canoe correctly. And so after about 4 different times of practicing, she caught herself doing it, and she dropped her head, towards the water. And sure enough, the boat spun and did exactly what it was supposed to do. And so I said, okay, honey, we're coming up on the biggest rapid. Now we can just run it clean, or we can drop into the hole, spin the canoe, and then surf it. But if we do that, we might end up swimming. I haven't yet, but it's a pretty badass move. And I said, what do you want to do, honey? And she thought about it for a second. She said, let's badass this puppy. And so we came in sideways, caught the wave, spun in, and it's that sense of adventurous and that wonderful spirit that she has that she gives to everything. As soon as she sort of gets over her angst and her anxiety. One final quick story. I come home every day. There are wall plates missing from the little light switch wall plates. They're missing all over the house, and then they turn back up, and they're like little pigs or giraffes, or and she's an amazing artist. And so I told her she wanted me to. I would fund her art project and get her an Etsy account. And so I went to the store, and I bought wall plates for 35 cents a piece, so that she can make all the art that she wants to. She's really something. So anyway, just kind of a fun little personal ADHD entrepreneurial energy and spirit in my daughter, to whet your appetite for what Liz is going to be sharing with you now.
Those are beautiful stories to get us started. Absolutely wonderful. Just exactly what we need. So I think we are going to go ahead and get started. It is almost 5 after, so we're just going to kind of go get started so that we can, be respectful of your time. So here we go. We're talking about ADHD and the entrepreneurial spirit and the superpowers that go with it. This is a sign I actually walked up this morning and took a picture of at Eagle View Ranch. And so I just want to reiterate how SOAR is so strength-based, and it is so much fun to work with SOAR because we're always looking at your children as the future world leaders and local leaders that they have the capacity and the potential to be. So today we're going to go through and talk about that potential and capacity and why it's so cool and why it's so unique and why it's such a strength, okay? Because sometimes when we're talking to people, that is not what bubbles up, right? And especially school, right? We're always looking at what's wrong with our kids. But today, we're going to look at what's right. So my favorite saying is there is no such thing as normal. And there is no such thing as normal when you're talking about humans. I've taught for over 40 years, and a lot of that 14 years was at the university level. And I would always ask each class of kids, and I had 160 per semester. I would always ask them, is anybody in here normal? If so, please come on up and I'm going to let you teach the class. You know, let anybody normal, anybody at all. And there wasn't anybody. I couldn't find a soul. I even asked in a faculty meeting one time, still no normal people. So we're all wired differently, and ADHD can be a great asset in the right environments. So that's important to think about, because we all want to match our assets with the environment.
Years ago.
Okay, and Sir Ken Robinson, yeah, go ahead.
Years ago.
Oh, you're frozen, John.
There are two giants in the field. There's Russell Barkley, who is done some just remarkable research on the ADHD community. And then many of you have read Driven to Distraction, and Ed Hallowell, and John Rady. But Ed Hallowell, and he comes from a real strength-based approach, right? And so this wonderful keynote was established with Russell and Ned Hallowell. And so you were going to get the, ADHD is a curse and ADHD is a gift. And so we were all waiting for this giant prize fight of ideas to happen. And it fizzled because it was a love fest and they agree with each other completely. But here's what I took from that remarkable keynote years ago at the CHAD conference. And that is this, that ADHD in and of itself is not a gift. It is not necessarily a positive. But because we grow up with ADHD and we learn to channel those challenges that we have, the inattentiveness, and then channel that to being able to hone our skills to be able to multitask, or some of the other things that Liz is going to be talking about. We have to remember that this does not happen without the framework and structure of nurturing the gifts and talents that come through our ability to persevere and take those things that we experience and find the gift in those opportunities. And that was a major takeaway for me for that, because I've done workshops where people have said, he seems to think that folks with ADHD are better than folks who don't have it. And the truth is that sometimes we are better because we've had to persevere. We've had to work harder for what we have. We've had to take those gifts that exist in our lives and find a way to manifest those in a more positive light. But it's a lot of work. And so I'm so thankful that Liz is sharing with you some of these wonderful ideas. Liz, thanks for giving me the floor.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime, John. We love your stories. What I wanted to share a story because it reminds me of what you're saying. And it is a friend of mine has a son, Colin, who I love and adore, but who has been a challenge for her because he has attention deficit disorder and learning disability. She moved schools to a special school, everything. And she just wasn't sure. I mean, she was really struggling. And one day she called me and she said, Liz, you're not going to believe what Colin did. I said, oh gosh, what? And so she said, he went on my computer. He was able to somehow backtrack and get my credit card. And then he went into the internet, and on this place that's just not even real place, it's called Second Life. He went in there and bought an island, a virtual island in a virtual place for $3,000. Can you believe that? And it was shocking for sure. But I said, that's amazing. He was able to backtrack and get your credit card. How do you even do that? You know? And he was able to go into this virtual world and barter for this island and buy it. Unbelievable. Those are some incredible skills. She's like, Liz, that is not the answer I was looking for. Because she didn't see the potential in all of that creativity. Now, given he was 13 years old, and certainly there is a negative consequence that followed him because of this behavior, the other thing to keep in mind is that there were no challenges, no barriers that he could not get through to reach his goal and get that done. And that is positive. And that's what a lot of successful people have and need to have. And also I suggested that maybe Colin needs to go work at the Army or something, because he could battle hackers forever. That's an incredible skill. So let's look at this. I looked at what is similar about our kids and entrepreneurs and just creative people, okay? And so these are the skills in the left hand, as we're looking at it, that come from attention deficit disorder. And actually, this is a list that SOAR has and shares with folks. So I found it really interesting that a lot of these things line up absolutely across the board. So intuitive here, and we're intuitive as a creative. And I'll show you the reference books that I use, because there's a lot of references I want you to look at and take note of when we're done. Risk takers, openness to experience. Our guys are inattentive, which in these two columns is considered dreamers and daydreaming. And I know a lot of us growing up who may identify as having attention deficit disorder were dreamers and daydreamers, especially in school. We're highly sensitive. We lead with our heart. Creative people are very sensitive. We're spontaneous, which means we may disregard the rules, and we definitely think differently. So when you tell us a rule, we're going to consider that real quick and decide whether we're going to go there or not. Flexible, we're very flexible, work independently really well. And mindfulness, and that's that ability to come inside, the ability to kind of think about where you are in the moment, okay? We're creative, obviously, out of the box thinkers. Imaginative play is huge for that creativity. So we'll talk about that a little bit when we get to that point. And then we're adventurous, which also makes us restless, which also helps us to turn adversity into advantage. And John, wasn't it in 2016 when Outside Magazine wrote an article about the SOAR experience, because they saw such a commonality in our SOAR kids and in great explorers and such.
And it's interesting. The author of that article called just for a quote, and the more we talked about the kids in the school that we have, she kept saying, "huh," and so eventually she decided to kind of work the article from the standpoint of the academy, and they joined us out at Seneca Rocks, and interviewed the kids and interviewed the staff. And it was, it was about ADHD and that spirit of adventure. And they quoted folks like Sir Richard Branson, and it was a remarkable article that really led to some of those spirit pieces that exist within us that allow us to do some extraordinary things when channeled correctly.
Shackleton, I remember she mentioned Shackleton, who really had to overcome a lot to get out of the Arctic. And it was just that he had that sort of never give up, there's a different way, we can figure it out, you know, spirit, which is what our kids have for sure.
He is, by the way, my favorite adventurer and explorer of all time, Ernest Shackleton, and what he was able to accomplish for me is truly one of the greatest examples of leadership and, you know, putting yourself out there, you know, and you know, doing some remarkable things that, you know, everybody survived that trip.
Yep.
Everybody survived that trip.
Absolutely, it gives you chills. It's really, it is the best story in the world. And so our kids are individualist. And we're going to talk about that a lot. You have to be a rugged individualist. You have to really enjoy yourself and have faith in yourself. We're also a little egocentric, and that's a big issue for our guys, is that changing perspective, and we're going to talk about that. And we also don't mind solitude. Spending some time just alone is fine for us. Kinesthetic learners, fickle, I'm going to talk about that, but because I had to look up that word. Now, what does fickle mean? Fickle means that I change, we would call it impatience maybe, but I will work on something till I'm tired of it, then I'll work on something else till I'm tired of it, then I'll work on something else. So I can swap jobs pretty quickly. And then passion is a full-bodied experience for our kids. When they are passionate, they are jumping up and down, they are talking 90 miles an hour, they are good to go. It connects with them physically, okay? So let's look at, these are the 10 things about that our kids have in common with these entrepreneurs and creative people. So now I'm going to take each one at a time. Here we go. So this notion of intuitive, which came up in 2 columns. So what are based on what one feels to be true, even without conscious reasoning. So it's instinctive. Our kids are very instinctive learners. They go with their feeling first, and then they take other input, okay? So an intuitive person is someone who senses things about people and their surroundings and their experiences that are not so evident to more normal people. That's why we question rules, okay? That's Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and those guys will tell you that they have a very strong intuitive feeling about something. Then they look up what's already out there. And then if they think there's another way, that's part of their intuition, they will go a different way, okay? So that's how our kids can use their intuition. So what are some strategies to use with that to help our kids build that intuition muscle? I like these 2 quotes. Don't think the intellect is a great danger to creativity, from Ray Bradbury, and intuition is more powerful than intellect. So Steve Jobs would use intellect second, intuition first. And a lot of really successful entrepreneurs work that way. So what you need to do is allow your child to take deep dives into their passions. Allow them to follow that intuitive thread for as far as they can, always offering alternatives, or have you considered, or helping them look at it from a different perspective. Allow downtime for your kids to just ponder. So if sometimes when we look like we're not doing anything, we're really thinking and we're just processing. So allow for that. Talk about possibilities with your child. So what could happen? What's the possibilities? What is possible? And ask what they're feeling about an activity or an event. Ask them what their gut is, okay? That it's very important that you take note of that and give them some time to articulate what they're feeling. And it's sort of like, John, your story with Landry to start with, you know, she was feeling nervous. She was feeling kind of nervous. So you had to add other information to help her see the possibilities. All right, our kids are risk takers by nature. They're the kids that are going to be, you know, walking the fence line, or, you know, down a railroad track or whatever. I mean, they're going to take risks. But the strength of that is that you're open to experiences. You don't mind taking risks to see what's going to happen. And you can see how that's really important if you're going to be an entrepreneur. I need to take a risk to see what's going to happen. You take chances, but our kids take calculated chances. Okay, they really do, more than you think. They're willing to take a chance, but they're scanning the environment, and they're watching out for making sure that they've planned a good pathway. So sometimes they act before they think, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But risk takers will reset the course. It's just like the explorers. If they get out there and they're going and they see that something's blocked them off, they will reset the course, and they will often do that in the moment. And that's very, very important if you're out there adventuring and whatever. You've got to reset in the moment. You can't overthink it. And our kids can do that. And our kids are very persistent towards a goal. Willing to do what it takes, especially if it's a goal that they thought of that is very important to them. The challenges for us as parents are that sometimes it feels like our kids don't learn from experience. That didn't work out well for you last time. Why are you going to do it again? Well, because they have other ideas. They're going to try a different route. They're going to, they'll go around a different way next time, but they are going to keep at it if that's a goal that they have set. And that is a gift. That's beautiful. So you have to fill in the learning from experience part. Another challenge is our kids are not always situationally aware. So sometimes they miss signals that this might not be a good idea. Okay. And again, you can fill that in. And then the other piece is we don't have a plan B, C, and D going in. We're going to make that plan in the moment. We can learn to do that, but we don't have it by nature. Okay. So what are some strategies to help risk takers learn these things? First is to ask them questions. So when you see them take a risk, whether it worked or didn't work, you want to ask the question, did that work for you? How did that work for you? Was it what you were anticipating? Was it different? Did you meet your goal? What happened? And then if you see them struggling, you want to ask, what is your plan B? Let's just say this may not work out. If it doesn't work out, what's plan B? So you're planting that seed. And again, I've mentioned this before, it takes a while. We're going to be seed planting for about 12 years, okay? It takes a while for these things to internalize. So remember as a parent, well, I told them once, well, that ain't gonna work. We're in school for 12 years, right? And you're gonna be planting these seeds for 12 years. So just keep that in mind in different ways over time. Okay.
I wanted to share, I told Liz I would be doing this, but just in terms of taking a risk, it's one of the most significant parts of anybody who has an entrepreneurial spirit. It's their willingness to believe in themselves and to take a chance. And most millionaires have won and lost several fortunes before they finally get that thing that sticks. And I'm going to tell you a story about David Neeleman. Some of you may recognize that name. He's the founder of JetBlue. Now, one of the things that made him so interesting is that JetBlue was the first company, the first airline, because one of David's other businesses was to create the software that allowed for e-tickets. And so JetBlue was the first airline to offer e-tickets. And the rest of the airline industry just scoffed at David and JetBlue, thinking to themselves, no one's going to show up to the airport without a ticket. That's not going to work. And so of course, he has saved the airline industry hundreds of millions of dollars by creating a whole new way to do business. And then a good friend of mine laughed once and said, leave it to somebody with ADHD to figure out a way to show up to the airport without your plane ticket and still be able to get onto a flight.
That's perfect. That's so perfect. What a great story. I love that. Well, this is my story of risk taking. This is my son who would leap from tall buildings and all of that if you didn't have your eye on him. And so we were traveling down south to visit a friend, and this was one of those amusement parks. And he said, "Can I bungee jump? Can I bungee jump?" And I said, okay. So I took the picture, but here's how we would prefer our kids to take risks, right? All locked in there, it's safe as it can be. Okay, I'll let you do it. But they're going to take risk regardless. So I just wanted to share, this is mom's way of allowing risk taking. So we are also, I have to move my picture. Here we go. Inattentive daydreamers. And the reason why is because we have a spotlight focus. There are things that will grab our attention that other people in the room may not be attentive to. And therefore we get stuck, and it looks like we're not paying attention to what's going on in the room. We are, but it's not to what everybody else is paying attention to. And then the other thing is, we sometimes have trouble making sense out of, especially social situations. So going into a social situation that I'm not prepared for, I don't know what the purpose of the gathering is. I don't know what my role in the gathering is, all of those things. I have trouble making sense of how it's working. And so I will sit off by myself, or just kind of find something, the dog or something to play with while I'm trying to make sense of what's going on. Okay. The other thing that we do as daydreamers is we create alternative stories. And that's great if you're creative. You're creating alternative ways, just like JetBlue. We're going to create an alternative way for the airlines to work. It's an alternative story that he made happen. That's fantastic. But it can also be a challenge, and I'll talk about that here in just a minute. And then the other thing we do is retreat into our imagination. And that's where we start talking about things that we love that maybe not everybody else loves, right? Anime or whatever, that's a fun place for me to exercise my imagination, okay? So what can we do? What are some strategies for that? Well, spotlight focus, what we can do is pre-pave the event. So we can say, here we are going to grandma's house, and this is what I want you to pay attention to at grandma's house, because she has worked very hard to make you this cute outfit, and I want you to look at it, pay attention to it, think about it, say nice things about it. We're going to pre-pave that event so that I know what I need to pay attention to when I get there. The other thing is we can give them the rules of the game ahead of time. So sense making. So we can help them understand that, again, if we're going to a family reunion, the first thing we're going to have to do is meet everybody. So here's a skill. I want you to go up, shake hands. Hi, I'm Liz, and go with that. So give them something to do that makes sense out of the environment. Okay. Creating alternative stories, while it can be a positive, like the airline story, Sky Blue, we can also get in trouble with it. And that is when we might be telling a non-truth, okay? And that happens in several occasions with kids with ADHD. And the one here that's important is if they don't know the rules and they don't know what to expect, they will elaborate so that it makes sense to them. So there are some entrepreneurs who have started with an idea, and then they've gone forward with this idea that was really just a creative story. But then as they tell the story, they're able to put together the pieces to make the idea come to life. So that's where this becomes a positive, okay? So I hope that makes sense. And then the other thing that we do is we retreat into our imagination. And the best strategy for that is to have a code word to bring them back. Okay, they need to spend that downtime daydreaming, absolutely. But if it's at an inappropriate time, or maybe other people aren't quite with them on that, give them a code word to bring them back to the here and now. Okay, that's the best strategy for that. The other thing is, we know our kids are highly sensitive. They are highly sensitive emotionally to stimulus. It can be clothing, it can be light, it can be noise, it can be smells, taste. You know, our kids are highly, highly sensitive. They're also highly sensitive to change. So transitions are really tricky for us. They're also highly empathic. So they are very empathetic with other folks, especially people that they see who may be hurt or may need something or whatever. They're very empathic. And when you do that, it drains you emotionally. It can cause a little bit of depression and anxiety when you're over empathic. And then also, we have a great heart for compassion. We really feel what other people feel in the moment, okay? So what can we do with that? All of those are very, very important parts of our creativity, because being able to be empathic or being able to feel strong emotions will move us forward if harnessed correctly. So strategies for the sensitive folks. First of all, we have to learn, explicitly learn how to regulate our emotions. So that's sort of going to be, again, a lifelong trek. How do we regulate our emotions so that they work for us? And if you'll notice, a lot of times your kids, when they're solving a problem, or when they are completely focused on something that motivates them, their emotions are not as dysregulated as they are when they're in situations that they don't have control over or they don't understand. Okay, so when they're plotting their path towards what they're motivated to do, it's much better. Okay, so motivation helps with emotional regulation. All right, and we also want to have our students or our kids be able to identify stimulus that triggers them, okay? So I found out when my son was in like the 4th grade, he was wearing the same shirt every day to school, and it was a black shirt. So it wasn't like, you know, really a fun shirt, you know, it was just a black shirt. And so finally I asked him, why are you wearing the shirt every day? Well, somebody had cut the tag out of it, and so it didn't have a tag. The other shirts had tags and they bothered him. And that's all I needed to know, tags out of all the shirts. So have them tell you what stimulus, other, you know, lights flashing. Sometimes our kids can see that and we can't even see it. But they can identify it if you ask them. Pre-pave or front load all transitions. We're going to get in the car, we're going to go to the grocery store. After the grocery store, we're going to go eat at Burger King. After Burger King, I'm going to drop you off at soccer. That's what we're going to do. Those 3 things. That's 3 transitions actually. And anywhere there could be a breakdown in one of those transitions. So you want to keep pre-paving it. My mother, when we were babysitting my nephew, I remember one night she said, I'm going to go tell Luke good night. And I went up there with her, and he was probably 4, and she was outlining the next day's activity for him before she put him to bed. And then she did it the first thing the next morning. So, you know, I just thought that was interesting. And of course, we have lots of ADHD in our family, and she knew how to do it intuitively. It was fabulous. So the next thing is, our kids are very empathic. And so we need to have empathy for them when they are overwhelmed. And then we need to also encourage them to empathize with others. When our kids feel overwhelmed, we need to help them to empathize with others. And what I mean by that is we have to have them move into that compassion stage, rather than to get caught up in taking on everyone else's emotional energy. So we want to have them think outside themselves as soon as they can, and then bring it to compassion. Yeah, I felt that way before. I understand how you feel. Is there anything I can do to help you? Can I bring you some water? What do you need? Because they can be wonderful helpers if we can move them into that compassion stage. Okay. The next thing is our kids are spontaneous. They often will disregard the rules. Now, I know in school and under certain circumstances, that can be pretty negative. But on the other hand, in order to move forward, we have to be able to look at the rules differently. Okay, we need to, and I think it's okay to question rules. I mean, right now our whole country is questioning the lockdown thing. It's not a bad thing. But so I just want to keep that in mind. Also, our kids think differently. We don't think, often we don't think linearly, like the step 1, step 2, step 3. We think big picture, right? Rather than from part to whole. We think whole to part, okay? And then what can often be seen as impulsivity is us planning in the moment. It looks like we're being impulsive. We've just jumped up and gone off and done something, but we're actually planning in the moment. And when an idea occurs, we're going to test it out. Let's go, So what happens is, in the learning loop, the traditional learning loop is I go into an environment or a situation and I have a choice. I can either engage or not engage. I can engage with Susie or I can engage with Billy. I just have a choice how I'm going to do that. And then I take action based on my choice. Then there's a consequence, either positive or negative. Then I evaluate that whole decision train. And if it was a good consequence, and I evaluate it to, yep, that worked for me, then I have a choice to try it again next time as well. So that's the learning loop. Our kids usually jump in with action. I just take an action. I blast into the room. Here I am. Hi, everybody, whatever, and doesn't matter what anybody's talking about. I'm just, bam, I'm there. And then I notice that nobody really wants to talk to me. So I see the consequence. It's not working for me really. And then I evaluate, well, okay, that didn't work. And then I just try something else again. I have a choice. But I kind of skip that part, jump right into the action. So what can we do for our kids to help them with that spontaneity piece? Focus them on the choices. And then, so you can go in loud, you can go in quiet, you can go straight to your friend. You have some choices. I want you to pick that. And I want to say on Thursday, we're going to be talking strictly about choices, because knowing that you have a choice in life is your strongest tool for moving forward. It teaches you all sorts of things. It teaches you responsibility for your actions, because I had a choice and this was my choice. Okay. It teaches you all sorts of things that we'll be talking about on Thursday. I don't want to take up too much time today, but please do join on Thursday. The other thing you want to do is pre-pave and role play those choices. So if you just blast in there, what do you think is going to happen? Let's try that. Let's play that out. Okay, so you want to play it out with the kids. And then also, if you see your kid go through a learning loop where they just start with the action and then get a consequence and then go, oh God, I guess I had a choice. And if you see that happen, then review the learning loop with them. What were your choices to start with? Which one did you choose? What action did you take? What was the consequence? And what might you do differently next time? They need to hear that from you often. What were your choices? What happened? And they need to hear it that way, rather than, that was the dumbest thing I ever saw. That didn't work for you, did it? That kind of thing, because we're training their brain. And so by asking them the questions, they have to pause and reflect. So that will help them control their spontaneity. They will still be spontaneous people for sure, but they will be able to slow it down, use it more appropriately when necessary, and so forth. So another thing about our kids is that they're flexible. They can work independently on things that they're interested in, and they can change when they're needed. So if you watch your child work on things that really motivate them, you'll see that they might do a little bit of watching YouTube videos on the topic. Then they're going to switch, and they're going to maybe listen to a podcast. Then they're going to write some stuff down. Then they're going to talk to a friend about it. Then they're going to, so they learn from lots of different venues, okay, lots of different ways. That's why school often doesn't work, because it's just lecture for the most part, unless it's science and math, and then you have some activity going on, which is great. And a lot of our kids are into science and math because of that. So they're very flexible learners. So they want information from as many portals as possible. And they'll do a little of this, little of that, little of this, and then they'll put it all together because of their wonderful imaginations and intuitions. The next thing that they can do is take all this information and then just sit on it for a minute and just let it sort of soak in. So they can go inside for long periods. One of the references that I'm going to give you is about a book called Deep Work. And if you haven't read it, I suggest that you do. It's really great. And it's also another a skill that Bill Gates developed early. And I want to also recommend that if you haven't seen Bill Gates' Brain, it's a 3-part series. I think it's on HBO, I'm not sure, but you really need to see it. It's lovely because it talks of him as a youth growing up with these same characteristics and how his parents were able to help him hone his skills in order to be Bill Gates that we know today. So I really want you to look at that. But this notion of going deep on a subject, learning as much as you can about it, and then taking some time and letting it soak in, our kids do that. And our kids are also not time dependent. And that's another reason school will get us a little crazy, because you're studying something, you're looking at, you're finally engaged, and then boom, the bell goes off and you have to shut everything down and go to the next thing. It doesn't make sense. People think that with attention deficit disorder, you have to switch things. You don't have to switch things. They will switch things. You have to provide an environment where there's lots of different ways to learn the same thing so that they can follow their brain's thought processes. But if you switch it up on them, like in school we try to do, it's distracting. So more about that later. I plan to do a webinar on learning and learning theory down the road sometime, but just trust me on that, and we'll keep moving. So strategies for flexible learners. Number 1, determine your work schedule together. That means let your child determine how they're going to build their schedule for the day. And so let's go back to school for a minute. I know a lot of you are still doing school at home. Allow your child to work with you to determine that schedule. So if they are active in the morning and their brain is really going, let them work on science maybe, or math, something that's active, that's brain active and physically active. Let them tell you how they need to parcel out that time. Allow them to order the tasks in ways that will keep them interested. So I'll read for a minute, and then maybe I'll look that up on YouTube, and then I'll maybe call my teacher and tell her, or make a PowerPoint or whatever. So allow them to help order the tasks that will keep them interested. Timers are helpful, but allow the kids to set the timer. So I'm going to read for 20 minutes and then I get to do something else, okay? Break down goals into manageable parts, because in that way, they can put the parts where they need them during their schedule. Use checklists and always add quiet time or downtime into the schedule, okay? So breaks can be quiet. Most of our kids will have a quiet break, but help them add that time into the schedule. All right, creative. Our kids are creative, out of the box thinkers. And this is a quote I really wanted to share. And it is, if all you had was academic ability, you wouldn't have been able to get out of bed this morning. In fact, there wouldn't even have been a bed to get out of, because no one could have made one. You could have written about it, about the possibility of one, but you could have not constructed it. This is Ken Robinson, who talks a lot about creativity. He is the creativity guru. He's British, and he worked with schools in Great Britain for years and years and years to include creativity. So I love that statement. Our kids think that way. You can't just think about things. You have to get out there and try to put it together. Okay. And the other thing about our kids is that imaginative play, cosplay, Comic-Con. So I put two words together, Comic-Con and cosplay, that should say. And then E3. And if you don't know what those things are, give them a look, Google it. It's the most creative two events I've ever seen. I've been to E3, which is the electronics arts event. It's like the conference for electronic arts. So all the people who are making new video games, all the people who are making new technology, they're there. And then cosplay or Comic-Con is where you dress up as your favorite character and you go to this convention and you're in character the whole time. That is so creative. It's amazing. And it's creative people being creative together. So our kids are kind of into that. Raise your hand if you have a kid who knows about either one of those things. There we go. Okay, perfect. All righty. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. All right, so a lot of you know what I'm talking about. So strategies for creative people: present them with a novel problem and see how many creative ideas they can come up with to solve the problem. So instead of telling your kids how to do something, you need to just present them with the problem and see what all ideas they come up with for solving the problem. You can do this in the day-to-day. For instance, my soon-to-be daughter-in-law had my daughter staying with her over her birthday. So it was my daughter's birthday. My future daughter-in-law said, I've got to make a cake. She didn't have any white flour. So she went through the whole cabinets and everything and pulled out all these ingredients and put them together and tried them and tested them, whatever. The best chocolate cake with whipped cream frosting with cinnamon and, oh my God, brown sugar. It was amazing. And have any flour, what are we going to do to make a cake? So just use the day-to-day and see how many ways your child can come up with creative responses to how that problem can be solved. Okay, and let them try to solve an old problem with one of those creative solutions. So if you have I don't know, I can't think of one right now, but if you have an old problem that's going on that you're like, what am I going to do? Let's say a screen door that doesn't fit or doesn't work, or just something around the house that you've been wanting to fix. Ask your child, see what they can come up with, that you have that resource in your house, and see what happens. And then brain teasers as a fun family activity. Our kids, and even in the back of the SOAR book, we have brain teasers. So if there's any downtime going on at all, you can ask your kids these questions. And the one that always sticks with me is there's a murdered body in the room. There's a box, but nothing hanging. A box next to the body, nothing hanging, and then there's a puddle of water. And so, how did the person die? So I'm not going to tell you right now, but email me if you want to know. All right. And then they're adventurous. And we talked about adventurous earlier on, but they're restless. They turn adversity into an advantage. And we talked about Shackleton, if you're just joined us now. And they take on challenges. Our kids will take on a challenge in a heartbeat. And they love it, you know, they really do. So playing games and things like that, always, always stimulating for the creative ADHD brain. Okay, so build challenges into the day. Can you make up your bed in less than 5 minutes? Ready, go, you know, or just thumb wrestle, or have them see if they can learn to whistle the Andy Griffith whistle song or any other song. Can you make a card house out of a deck of cards 3 levels high? Or can you cook supper tonight? So any daily challenge is good. John, did you want to say something?
Yeah, you know, I wrote an article for one of our newsletters last year when I talked about, instead of making something a goal, or you know, if you turn it into a quest. All right, so anytime you create a quest, you're going on an adventure. And so I think that there are really exciting ways that you can try and find ways to, for your adventurer, to find unique ways to go about accomplishing some of these remarkable things that, again, spur the entrepreneurial spirit that is in all of us.
Absolutely, absolutely. So this one, hold on just a second. Yeah, so I went the wrong way. Why did I do that? Hold on. There we go. All right, so individualist. This is one that I really want to spend some time with, and I know our time is getting short, but I really do want to spend some time on this. Our kids are egocentric. They see things from their perspective, but their perspective is pretty daggum cool, so they really enjoy that. And it's difficult to get them to see things from someone else's perspective, okay? So they spend a lot of time in solitude, and we're constantly working on perspective shifting. And that's going to be one of the things that you're going to need to work on for quite a while, but always, every day, give it a bump, because we need to learn how to do that. And we have to explicitly teach perspective shifting. So if you can role switch, if you're child is feeling, you know, an injustice, or, you know, something wasn't working the way they thought it would, role shift with them, because typically it's because they're not able to see the other person's perspective.
Years ago, we and we do this as an activity. We've got a wonderful way to help teach perspective through activity, and that is something called silent number lineup. And so the kids believe that their quest is to try and figure out how to line up, you know, from you know 1 to 50, or 1 to 10, you know, without using their voices. The real challenge is that we give negative numbers and zeros. So the kids who are 1 absolutely are sure that they need to be at the front of that line. And then you've got the kid who's 0, who's absolutely even more sure that he needs to be at the front of that line. And then you've got the kid who's -4, who just absolutely is sure that he needs to be at the front of that line. And it just, and it's a wonderful processing activity to talk about mindsets and perspective, and sometimes being willing to look at things from an out of the box.
Perfect, 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 perfect example. That is perfect. So we need to do every day. You need to find a way to help your child think about perspective shifting. You can use metaphors, you can model it, you can pre-pave it. There's just lots you can do. And then the other thing is, you want to talk to people about what is that other person's expectation. Okay, so my daughter was asked by her father, my husband, to clean the toilet upstairs, and she said she would get around to it, and that was not okay with Dad, because Dad's expectation is, if the toilet is, and at this point it was clogged, if the toilet is clogged, that's an emergency. Her feeling was, well, it's not really an emergency, it's my toilet and I can do it. Whoa. So we had to get her to see it from Dad's perspective, and then he had to be able to see it from her perspective. And actually, that was the trickier role. Um, but anyway, so what is that other person's expectation? Why they're acting that way, and how can I understand that? That will help me shift my perspective. Okay. Um,
Hey,
Fickle.
Liz, I've got to jump off here, but I'm going to share one final story that really speaks to this slide quite beautifully, and then I will sign off.
Okay.
I had a young man on our high ropes course, and he was just absolutely so gifted kinesthetically. You know, he was moving through really quickly, and it was like, you know, it was like nothing to him. And so I called up to him and I said, Zach, you're a wild man. And Zach looked down at me and he says, no, no, I'm not. And I said, yes, you are, Zach. You're a wild man. And I said, no. He said, no, Big John, no, I'm not. And so I said, well, Zach, if you're not a wild man, what are you? And, you know, again, our kids are tethered into the cables, so, you know, there's no way they can fall. And he leaned way out, trusting his tether, and he put his hand over his heart, and he said, I'm passionate. And so I love this gift that our kids have, this passionate, kinesthetic, tactile nature. And with that, I sign off. Liz, again, wonderful job. Thank you to all of those attendees who come, and we'll talk later.
All right, perfect. Well, we're just about done, so we'll see you next time. We'll see you on Thursday, John.
Looking forward to it.
All righty. So that explains this slide. I'm going to just keep moving on because we're running out of time, I know. But some strategies for these folks are to build movement into the day, build movement into the schedule, allow them to walk, wiggle, or happy dance. My daughter used to happy dance all the time in Walmart, and she was just trying to make the other people happy. And it made us all happy. It was wonderful. And then give lots of opportunities for working with their hands, of course, any kind of art, building birdhouses, planting the garden, anything that's going on at your house right now, get them out there digging around with you. And I'm sure you all are doing that. I know you are. Here are the resources that I wanted to share with you. And I can put these when we put the recording up on the website. I can give you a PDF of these resources if you're interested in them. Sherry Campbell is the one who wrote the article of Highly Creative People from Entrepreneur magazine. And I looked back at a lot of her work and got sort of the characteristics for the entrepreneurs. Scott Barry Kaufman and Carolyn Gregory, Wired to Create. And I think I have that book here. I've recommended it several times, but it is a great book. It tells you all about other entrepreneurs and such who have done amazing things, who are just like your kids. So I love reading those things. And Adam Grant, another great book, Originals, How Nonconformists Move the World. Again, Ken Robinson is one of my very, very favorites. And he is all about creativity and the power of creativity. And Cal Newport did the book on deep work. And the only other thing that I didn't put up here, I think, is that I want you to watch Bill Gates' Brain. It doesn't matter what you think about Bill Gates. He is one of our kids who made it to the top, and it's a great, great story. So I'm going to answer a couple of questions. How to get the PDF. When we post the recording, it will be right there. You will just click on it. And is there a way your husband can see today's seminar? Absolutely. In probably 2 or 3 hours, we will have it posted on our website at soarnc.org. And I'm going to put this in the chat box if I possibly can. soarnc.org /webinars with an S /. So I'm going to write that down right now. .org/webinars/ and all of our recordings are there. If you have any questions or any comments or anything you want to email me, my email is liz@soarnc.org. So please do email me. I have been in my almost 40 years now work with this population, I have in parallel been always fascinated by how these traits that our kids have are absolutely part of what will help them reach any goal that they would like to reach. So it's very exciting. So thanks so much for joining us today. I really, really appreciate it. And look forward to seeing on Thursday when we're talking about the power of choices. If your kids are not making choices, and I'm just going to stop sharing my screen real quick. If you have, or they're making poor choices, and often that happens with our kids a lot because they're spontaneous and creative, right? But if your child is making poor choices or just not making choices, just doesn't seem to be motivated to make a choice, you really need to join us for today. Pierre, I see your hand is up, and you said, thank you for showing me the exceptional entrepreneurial skills and gifts of my child. And I know Pierre's child intimately, and a lovely, lovely daughter. And she has incredible power to do whatever she would like in life. She is an amazing, amazing human being. So thank you, everybody. I will end this for now. And again, if you want to see the recording, feel free to join us at the website. Thank you. All right.